I would like to first of all welcome Paolo to the webinar. Thank you for making the time. And I would like to introduce you a little bit, and then you help us introduce yourself and the company a little bit. But I mean, Paolo is originally from the Philippines, lives in Singapore, is the general manager of Helpling in Singapore, which is a very interesting company by itself. And Paolo can explain a little bit more. And we have been working together for already quite some years. It's been a very interesting journey, and because Paolo manages with the general manager of Helpling, really the operations and the execution of Helpling in Singapore, but then together with the remote team that they have built in the Philippines, I believe this is a very interesting topic for those of you who have joined us to learn a little bit more about what it takes to really operate and scale while building a remote team and having a remote team. So, so Paolo, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me, Nico. Quite a humbling experience to be able to speak. My name is Paolo. As he mentioned, I'm from the Philippines. And just a little bit about Helpling Singapore. We're basically a platform for home services in Singapore. We're originally headquartered in Germany, but one of our largest markets is here. You could liken us to something like Grab, except for home services. Someone would create an account with us, they'd book our home services, a cleaner will show up at their doorstep, and then they'll continue to do so in perpetuity until you want to stop. And our goal as a platform is just to make sure that they continue to stay with us for that time through excellent customer experience and service delivery. So yeah, that's Helpling in a nutshell.
And how did it start? Because as you said, it was originally from Germany, but then Singapore was the second entity or the second market that the German company then explored and grew. Just very quickly to put this in context, I find the history of, or the story of Helpling actually quite fascinating.
Yes, so I think at least in the context of Singapore, one trend that's been continuing here is there's a thing called government housing here, where as the city continues to grow, and I think this is a trend some of the people in the Philippines will see, with new developments and condos coming up, the sizes get smaller and smaller, which make it more difficult for families to kind of have a live-in help. So Singaporeans, being very hardworking individuals, also need a lot of help because oftentimes they're dual income families. So they tend to outsource work like housekeeping to people, just to make things a lot more easier for both the husband, the wife, and the children. So it's a very prime market for that, because already the behavior in the market is, look, if I can outsource it and save myself a little bit of time, then I will do so. So that's why we place such a heavy focus on Singapore. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, thank you for that. So then let's go straight into the kind of first question. So we're going to do this as a question and answer for Paolo to give us, or for you to give us a little bit of your take, your experience, what you experienced, and how then you decided to build it. So how did you first realize that the complexity itself of then building Helpling and growing Helpling in Singapore, that complexity was becoming more and more difficult and was growing faster than actually the team. And then I guess that also led you to explore the idea of building a remote team. So how did this come about, and what made you realize that?
Yeah, so I think this is a problem that most businesses face, is the issue of scale, right? When our monthly recurring customer base started growing beyond the 10,000 mark, we realized we were doing over like 50,000 cleaning sessions per month in the business. At a scale like that, let's say even if you have a very low defect rate, you're going to be faced with at least 100 events that require your attention monthly. Sure, let's say that it's a small percentage of our customers, but those are the moments where your reputation is at stake, and then just a single bad Google review can reduce future customer perceptions of your brand. So yeah, we can design a system with templates, decision trees, business process models to deal with these situations. But then, the point is, you're never going to be able to cover all escalations, because the nature of B2C marketplaces is there's always going to be customers that surprise you. And the customer success team are the first touch. So the experience pre-escalation often predicts how successfully we can deal with those issues before it even reaches a manager. The idea is it shouldn't, right? So this is where it didn't make sense to only have my leaders be able to be the ones to deal with those difficult customers, but to have very strong executives under them that have a similarly high level of EQ and ownership. So the ability to think on your feet, to empathize with the customer, that's not something I find is easy to systematize. It's only something that we found that we could hire for. Yeah.
Okay, and then from there immediately came the idea to build that team in the Philippines, maybe because of your experience with the Philippines, or was that something that you guys experimented with and then saw that it actually worked, or you A/B tested? How did you then decide to make then the leap to actually build that type of customer success, customer support team in the Philippines? Out of curiosity.
So at least in Helping Singapore, we have a very international team. So we do have teams sitting in Malaysia, we have teams sitting in the Philippines, some in Myanmar as well, because some of the providers on our platform are Burmese. So it made sense to have that kind of connection.
Yep.
If I'm being quite blunt, it's a consequence of the talent pool, right? I will go where I find results in terms of the type of profile that I need to hire and that fits my organization's needs. So we do have very, very talented Malaysia team present with us as well, and they've been with us for years and years. But then in terms of the talent pool in the Philippines, at least on the part of Penbrothers, we haven't also had difficulty at all finding talent that fits the profile of the customer success representative that we need. They displayed a high level of EQ and a sense of ownership, so it basically became a no-brainer and self-reinforcing behavior that, okay, this talent has worked for us. We see these people's names frequently on 5-star Google reviews. So it's quite a rich talent pool, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. It is actually, I mean, to be very honest, there's 110 million plus minus people in the Philippines with, just if you look at the big Fortune 100 companies, there's over 80 have teams here. A lot of Japanese companies have teams here. Chinese companies are now building teams here, European companies. So the talent pool is not just the amount of talent, but actually I think what's beautiful about the Philippines is also the amount of talent that is being trained by top level companies in coming out of this. I mean, and if you look at the accounting sector, which is not related to what you do, but it's interesting also, like all the big accounting firms have big teams here. Again, then you get a really nice pool of talent that are highly trained, sophisticated, well managed, have experienced the international setup. So that's quite interesting. But going back to your initial challenge of the scaling and the growing. So at the end of the day, if I understand you correctly, so the growing created, or the scaling to 50,000 created then friction and problems. And as you said, even if it's only a small percentage that are having issues, the reputational damage is too large. So then for you built a team to support that, as you said, Malaysia, Burmese, Philippines. So really to make sure you can take care of that and be close to your customer. I guess that's a solution, really, to build the team and build it as needed. With that, we have seen this also with some clients where they came to the Philippines not because, as you said, the talent was here, but also because then Philippines allowed them to do a 24/7 operation, for example. So in the case of American clients, Philippines is American nighttime, so then they can offer that, things like that. So you can really experiment with different solutions to the same problem, which is a problem of how do I deal with scale and customer issues. Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
exactly.
Let's go. So let's ask you another question. So when things start breaking, or what was your experience in a marketplace that was the first thing to start break, like to hit like a wall, to become a problem? And I'm assuming from my experience, I never did marketplace, but I did other things. There is a few things that start hitting a wall, ironically at the same time. So what was your experience?
I think any consumer business faces this, right? Let's say you have a restaurant, and then maybe your first branch is wonderful. You get 5-star reviews on it. Everyone's very happy with your service. And then you expand into franchises. It gets larger and larger, and the amount of control you have over quality and service starts to erode. So in my opinion, the customer centricity and the hygiene metrics are the first to erode when you're starting to scale. At a smaller scale, it's very easy for your first few employees to care, to empathize with their customers, because again, there's only a small volume of them. And also the fun part is there's also the pressure of visibility, right? Oh my gosh, my
Yeah.
boss can see my work. So messing up with one customer out of 1,000 reflects quite clearly, the paper trail of, okay, who messed up on this customer? There's that pressure. But when you're at 50,000, let's be completely blunt, it's just human nature, right? When you're able to see, this is where it's very clear to me which of the team members are willing to own the relationships, or to see if they can just get away with it because this customer becomes just a number in the KPI dashboard, right? So this can lead to complacency, and then people are just doing what's necessary to get by, but not necessarily to deliver the top-notch customer experience. And I think a lot of kind of that ownership comes from a intrinsic sense of character, which again, we need to hire for, right? So aside from the pressures of just naturally being human, there's the pressures of the business as well. So when we grow, there's a much larger pressure to grow more, grow faster, new customer growth, new customer acquisition. And then maybe the customer experience falls to the wayside and, let's maintain just nice enough so that we can just continue to grow. Historically, though, the best businesses have always consistently put their customers first, even at a scale. So I think if anyone's familiar with the Amazon and Zappos acquisition, Zappos sold shoes, and Amazon acquired them because they've always went above and beyond to put their customer first. And then that's also where you get the stable recurring revenue basis. By putting the customer experience first, you won't have to worry so much about acquiring a significant amount of customers. Yeah.
And I'm assuming, just out of curiosity, that a lot of, or at least some percentage of your customer acquisition is not just by people finding you online or through I guess Google reviews, but actually people recommending you to other people, correct? I would assume that's also part of your acquisition model. And if that's the case, I mean, it is in our case, but that's the case in your case, making sure that the customers are taken care of, even at larger scale, is critically important. As you see, I mean, a bad review in Google is bad, but a bad personal review is like, no, don't use them. Do not touch them. It's even worse. I mean, that spreads like wildfire, at least within that complex, so to speak, in the building. Yeah, I would assume.
Yeah. Word of mouth is definitely the most powerful. Yes, we have Google Ads, everything, all of that, but nothing is stronger than a face-to-face testimonial. Yeah.
So to put it differently, when you get to this larger point and you're growing, and as you say, it becomes just a KPI. So then the CX part that you have built has those two components that we talked about it before. So basically that hygiene component, but also that making sure the relationship keeps working and combining those two things, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. It's that strong sense of ownership. Yeah.
Yeah, which is it's not easy. I mean, specifically when you get at volume, maintaining, keeping that. I think that's not just, as you said before, about having the right matrices and KPIs and dashboards and all that, and like decision trees. Then it actually comes down, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, a lot to also the team that you're building, the selection of the team, maybe even the core values. I mean, when we started this call today, or the pre-call, you mentioned also that you had team building yesterday. So that's where those kind of like soft elements become very important, to build that quality through relationship at the end of the day. Yeah, even within the team.
Yes, within the team, super important that they all get along with each other because they share the work. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and the responsibility of the work. Correct.
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
Great. Let's move on to the third question. So let me try to phrase this in a less long way. But when you try to solve the things that are failing, at the end of the day, because as you mentioned this a moment ago, you hinted at it. So you have what is perceived as the problem, but then if you go deeper, if you do a root cause analysis, you kind of realize, okay, there's other things that are failing. What did you see there, and what fixes did you implement? What was your experience there?
Okay, so I made these mistakes, so that I'm coming from a position of failures and experiences as well. So I think the number one common fix, for example, that organizations try to go through is they try to do it via more headcount, right? And the most accessible way that maybe SMEs can do so is by hiring a BPO or a call center to accelerate their operations. They're sold this plug and play model. Yes, we can handle your load, but then maybe that BPO doesn't necessarily know exactly intimately what their operations look like. They'll throw money at the problem. They'll assume that more headcount means they get better hygiene metrics. But I think, again, from our discussion earlier, hygiene metrics is only one part of the picture, but the ownership is a totally different part, right? So I disagree with this because it gets you up and running quickly, but it's not bespoke to exactly what your customers want and need, and only you know your customers best. Yes, there is more work, like what we've done with Penbrothers in building up a team from the ground, from an EOR. Yes, we have to do our own SOPs. But again, who's going to do that other than you, especially if you care a lot about your customers? So don't throw money at the problem with more headcount if your SOPs aren't there. And again, it needs to be bespoke to what your business needs. So another mistake that I find is that people tend to overspend on SaaS tools, so software that promise significant productivity results, automation, AI, etc. I'm not against any of those. However, those, I believe, aren't meant to plug holes in your system, but rather to make an already strong process and people system much to multiply the productivity of the peoples and the processes. It's not meant to plug the holes. So this is similar to, if you have a rudimentary tech system and then your people and processes are not great, then you onboard this $100,000 plus software. It's like trying to get someone to drive an F1 car while they're used to driving a Toyota, and then asking them to go as fast as Max Verstappen. Sorry for all the F1
Clearly,
references.
we have an F1 fan here.
Yeah. So like,
and a Verstappen fan, clearly. Okay.
Yeah. So you're trying to plug a gap with something that like your organization just doesn't know how to operate yet, right? So again, this goes back to the fundamental kind of root cause. Like you need strong hiring, you need strong training, you need strong processes before you want to throw money at a very powerful tool on your team. If you build from the ground up, you'll be able to dictate your structures, escalations, SOPs, etc. So yeah.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned that. I read an article, it's been a while, but I read an article and I don't remember the exact details, but it was saying something along the lines that for most tools companies buy or get or SaaS tools, the percentage of the capabilities the tool really offers and what is actually used is minute. So most companies, like they get the super powerful tool and then use a fraction of it. I mean, and even, I guess, even me on a day-to-day basis, I mean, we all have Excel nowadays, but do we really use all the capabilities? No. So, I mean, I guess a calculator could do most of the work I do on Excel. So, but to put it differently, or to summarize it differently, if I understood you correctly, so basically you start with the people, like build that foundation, like then really build the processes around it, make sure that the processes are solid and good and well working, and then layer the technology, whatever technology that is nowadays. I mean, nowadays, I guess, it's also with a lot of AI, and then build from there. And it's an interesting thing because we saw this just very quickly as a side note. Also, another thing you mentioned technology. Actually, what I have also noticed with clients and also even with ourselves when we scaled is that we feel that we have the processes, we have the people, everything was working fine, and then we lose one person. And suddenly we realize, oh, it was all working because of that one person. That's the person who was keeping everything together. And that's, again, then it folds back on the processes. Now, if you would have that situation and layer technology, then it becomes an even bigger problem over time, if you lose that person. So it just multiplies suddenly. Anyway, thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you for that, Paolo. So let's move on to the fourth question that I will one more time try to summarize. So what changes did you make that make the biggest difference in your marketplace, in Helpling when you started scaling, when you went from the 10,000 to the 50,000 and I guess now to the next level? So what were the adjustments? I mean, I'm assuming was the people, the processes, but give us your take on it.
So this one's going to be a little bit more on the micro level in terms of kind of operations and customer success, right? I think three things. There's the specialization, there's ownership, and then there's work type segmentation. So just to set the frame, right? Jack of all trades, master of none. It's very hard to do something excellently as a customer success rep if you're asked to do everything. So, for example, in our organization, we've divided our team according to whether they're working on time-sensitive tasks like escalated calls, chats that need to be taken end to end, or the other part, which is tasks that are asynchronous and non-urgent. For example, customers that want to change their booking a month down the line, but they aren't expecting immediate gratification, right? I can't expect realistically someone to handle both of those because, again, they're different prioritization. So that's why now we've segmented ownership of specific task types. So when you have people specialize, it's also much easier to set boundaries for ownership. And again, this comes back to ownership. And work type segmentation. So in my example, people in team one would own the work so long as it came from that particular channel. No matter what, they're not allowed to pass it to someone else. They need to own that, take it end to end and finish it immediately and pass it to no one else. Passing it slows it down and also makes the quality a lot worse. So we train the team to handle about 90% of the problems. And then the 10% that are difficult, we have to escalate those to their leadership because those require a little bit more finessing, or some people genuinely just want to talk to a manager. So
yeah, it's fair. It's fair.
Yeah.
But how do you discern, or how do you train your team to know when to make the, because I mean, the idea or the ideal is do it end to end, don't pass it on. So how did you then set up the structure or the system that they know when to pass it on? Like, where's that trigger point? How did you discern that?
When to pass it on to leadership, or like
Yes.
between each? To pass it on to leadership, then we quantify it. So we are in people's homes quite a bit. We do give people the authority to, for example, reimburse customers a specific amount. If it grows beyond that or proves to show some reputational risk, then we will escalate it to the leadership immediately. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So basically, if I summarize it, and I mean, we created a slide because we had a pre-conversation, but it's basically you deal with, so the structure you set up for dealing with the marketplace and all the customer support that you need there is basically have the immediate part taking on, make sure things get solved, prioritize correctly, and then layer it with a judgment level. So if there is something, as you said, reputational damage or higher cost, or another component that it's outside of those parameters, then it gets triggered and it gets elevated or escalated.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have seen this with a lot of clients. I mean, Philippines is actually, at the end of the day, a country where a lot of customer success happens, and it has to do with the quality of the Filipinos, but not just in terms of quality of the work they deliver, but the quality or the warmth of the Filipinos, which is something that a lot of customers really appreciate. I mean, I was meeting somebody maybe 6 weeks ago, and he was saying, this was in the US, and it was really interesting. When I told him that I live in the Philippines, he's like, oh, the other day I had a call with a Filipino customer success agent. He was amazing. He solved everything, and he was super friendly and super helpful. So I think there's, as you said, people also many times, they want the problem solved, but they don't want it solved by people just like solving it and throwing it at you. So it's I'm half German, and sometimes when I talk to a German customer service provider or somebody who has somebody in the Philippines, I can significantly feel the difference, and it's really, really interesting. I'm more happy with the ones over here. Anyway, side note that it's not that relevant, but it's relevant in my opinion.
Got it.
All right, let's move to the last question in that case. So the remote team itself, and obviously the remote team has advantages and disadvantages. As you said, the advantage is that you really have good talent, they have certain characteristics, but there are also challenges, like making them part of the team because it's remote takes a little bit more effort. Setting them up properly, setting them up for success. But how did you, like, what did you leverage there best for your type of operations? Like, how did you leverage the remote team the most? I mean, in your case, obviously, you have the same time zone. So it's not that you can leverage it by saying, like, well, I use them for the 24-hour or for the night shift or stuff like that. So how did you leverage it in your case?
So I think multiple factors for leveraging this, right? Well, number one, most of is the flexibility. We are a B2C operation, so we need to be running 7 days a week. This means that some people will have to, shall we say, make sacrifices and not have a typical Saturday, Sunday off day. And for example, some people may need to start their shift at 7 a.m., but get to end earlier at 5 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's remote to begin with allows that flexibility because these people, I'm sure you know the traffic situation in the Philippines, some people have to commute 2 hours in the morning, wake up at 5 a.m. to get to work, and then maybe wait for traffic to subside until 10 p.m. to finally get home at like 11:30. So we're shaving off a significant amount of time that they're spending just getting tired and doing nothing. But in exchange, we're asking for flexibility with regard to, oh, is it possible for you to take on this kind of shift schedule as well as take on these kinds of off days, right? So that's kind of like the give take relationship that we have for this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. I can see that. So you're leveraging it also by creating efficiency through like the coverage, making sure that they are, by being remote, that they don't spend insane amount of time stuck in traffic, that I'm intimately aware of or aware with if of. Yeah, I mean, just said it yesterday, to be very honest. So things, and then I guess, but the team itself, I think the remote team. So how do you make sure that the remote team creates that even though they're remote, um, that jointness of a team? Like, what do you do in there? I mean, do you do certain team buildings?
Mm. So we do visit our remote teams in the different countries quite regularly, just to make sure that we get them gathered together, see face to face. There are some things that are more easily communicated verbally and face to face. It's important to get to know a person's character. Maybe someone doesn't type with emojis, so you think that they're angry, but in reality they're not. So that FaceTime is definitely still very important. On the other hand, we also have this software. It's kind of like a virtual office where people are able to, go as a sprite and then virtually sit next to their teams, and they're in a room and it's like they're seated next to each other. So quite frequently, even out of work hours, for example, sometimes I would sneak in as a ghost just to walk around the virtual office. I would see them. They'd just be sitting in the corner and then, talking about things unrelated to work. So the kind of relationship is there. And I don't think that that's significantly difficult, especially in a customer experience role, because they definitely have a wide variety of stories to share with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you basically recreate the water cooler moment or the coffee break moment and things like that. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting what technology nowadays offers you. At the beginning, when remote started, that did not exist. So you had to like create other things. I remember, I think one of our clients had the people working remotely together, but at the same time they were like on a ginormous Zoom call to recreate the office setup in a way. It was interesting during COVID. That was specifically during COVID when people were forced to do remote, but they didn't know how to set it up. So that was kind of interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I think you mentioned some interesting things there about the 7-day coverage, making sure that you allocate them the correct way possible, and then assign ownership, as you mentioned also before. So, is there anything else from your perspective that for the remote CX team, specifically for a marketplace, is like critical to think through if you're thinking about making it happen or setting it up?
You can't discount the amount of work that you'll have to put in as a leader to emotionally connect with your team. So a significant amount of my time is also spent having one-to-ones and skip levels with these individuals, checking in on whether they're okay, what growth path they want. Because when you're working remotely, it's very much easy to be like, okay, just another day. But then you need to consistently look for growth paths, because again, you work so hard to find this good talent, and then you need to damn well make sure that they stay within the organization. So
yeah, and make them feel part of the organization and set them up for success. I agree, and it's not easy, as you said. It's underestimated, or well, I never learned it in university, but it becomes more and more part of what you have to do as a leader. It's not just, hey, let me look at the KPIs and see if everything is functioning and working. And so it's really about, okay, how are you doing? Where are you? How's your life? Like, what's up? Things like that. It's takes a lot of time, but there's a lot of, for me personally, there's a lot of joy in it, to be very honest. Yeah. Well, let's go to the questions. In that case, let's see what questions came up. So one of the questions here is like, what challenges are companies facing with customer expectations at the age of AI? You want to take a stab on it, Paolo?
Yeah, sure. So AI is, the new very exciting thing. It's like the coming of the internet. I believe that it's still in its early stages and it can continue to contribute. Um, Maybe speaking from personal experience here, if I'm quite irritated, I would very much like to be directed to a human effective immediately and not a decision tree or a machine. It's not yet at the stage where it can action quite complex requests, but at the very minimum, it can also help me with more simple ones. So in a consumer business, it's so difficult to find the right balance between being human and being efficient. Because if you're efficient, then you take away that kind of brand love. Um, it becomes a transactional relationship between yourself and the consumer. But then if you find the humanity part of it, then again, this person becomes beholden to you. Maybe they grow attached to a customer service person. Let's say Philip. They're like, oh, I want to talk to Philip. In that case, you've earned their loyalty already, right? So
Yeah.
uh, more to see. AI still has a bit of a ways to go to help people feel comfortable with it, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, we see that I mean, we have 130 plus clients, and we see a little bit of that across a lot of them. Because I mean, the question is interesting: is like what were the customers' expectations specifically when regards to AI? And it's interesting because customers are not all the same. So we have seen customers who are very happy to use AI and get an AI chatbot to answer their questions. But then we have other customers within the same company, for example, client of ours, that the client tells us, like, well, we have a certain group of customers, let's say X percentage, that are fine with a bot. And we have another percentage that are fine with a bot up to a point, and then they want a human. And then we have others who, from the get go, say, I do not want to talk with a bot. And yes, I understand there is a perception that could be because they're not yet used to it. But I believe humans are different. Some people like to go out, other people don't. Some people like pizza, some people don't. So if you really want to retain all your customers and service all your customers, you need to then build that structure that allows that flexibility to cope with all those needs and not just with one need. And you can see that a little bit. I mean, we had a client who wanted to go full AI with customer success, and then they realized that it was blowing up some very important relationships. Like a certain percentage of customers were happy, but another percentage of customers were like, absolutely not happening. If you do that, I move. And so they had to like rebalance the whole thing. And I think that's interesting. And that finding the right balance is something that, as you said, we're in the infancy. So this is still going to go on, and it's not easy.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think to start, it makes sense to do both and then again see which provides results and head in that direction, right? We can never be too closed off on one or the other path. Yeah.
Okay. The next question would be, how do we prevent headcount bloat while building and scaling? This is a good question.
Um,
Uh,
that
I
one,
actually don't have a perfect answer to that. It's a little bit of, from in my case, is a little bit of experimenting. Because it's a chicken and the egg problem. You have that growth. I mean, that's
yeah,
my experience. You have the growth. You need to
yeah,
scale for the growth.
yeah.
But sometimes you overdo it, then you have to rebalance. Sometimes you underdo it, and you're like, oh, this is not working. I need to like catch up. I mean, it's you can plan perfectly, but then things in the middle don't go the way you expected. So it's a little bit of like push and pull, I think, for me at least. It's not easy. I don't know. What's your take, Paulo?
Uh, thanks for your question, RV. I think outside of doing the typical Excel business analytics, etc., seeing the workload tickets, and then doing backwards numbers to see how many headcount can do how much. It also depends on kind of the strategic of the management. So I guess I'll just share how perhaps I approach this. Um, Within my organization, I like to set an internal rule that at the very most, on a daily average, my people should be at least 80% of their capacity. It's not sustainable for me to have someone working at their 100% every single day because work will always come in waves. Customer
Yeah.
acquisition may be something goes viral because of our marketing team, and then all of a sudden we have this boom in demand. If on average everyone's at 80%, and then I need to stretch them to buy time, and then they have to go up to 120%, then while they are keeping that load, because again, they've been charged up from not being overworked, I'm also then able to start tackling kind of like the hiring part of it, right? You leave a buffer for your team by making sure that they're not overworked, so that when you do need to ask them to, go all in, they're more than happy and willing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I guess I mean, the way I would look at it is a little bit what you just said is a little bit, it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. So if you're trying to sprint the whole time, you're going to burn out and then your team will burn out and then you will lose key people. You will have them up in arms or you have other challenges. Whereas if, as you said, if you run that race at a rate, at a pace that is sustainable, but you still have that capability of going even a little bit faster if you need, as you said, that buffer, I think that's critically important. But it's not a perfect science because again, we're talking about humans, and sometimes somebody is at 80%, something happens in their personal life, and suddenly they're at 100% because things change. So it's an interesting challenge, and I think that's where management comes in. But thank you for the answer, Paulo. I think that was really helpful. Okay, we have the last question from Wilbert. Thank you, Wilbert. In a two-sided marketplace, how do you balance customer expectations with the needs and limitations of service providers? Interesting.
I believe that we need to treat our service providers with equal importance as our customers, actually,
Mhm.
because they are a reflection of the what the customer will perceive our brand as.
Yeah.
So if I have unhappy service providers, that will show the moment that they show up to the customer's doorstep. So in our organization, we actually have two separate teams that always battle it out. One is responsible for the customer side and one is responsible for the service provider side. And then they try to equally protect the interests of both. We reach a middle ground that solves for both problems. I don't think that it makes sense to heavily be biased towards one or the other. It needs to always consistently be in equilibrium. You have unhappy service providers, you can consider your execution of the job out the window, basically. Yeah.
Well, not only that, I mean, then there is something inherently wrong with another piece of your company because if your service providers are unhappy, then clearly they're unhappy for a reason. As you said, I mean, they're overworked, they're badly scheduled. There is some operational challenge that makes them unhappy, and that will affect the customer experience, and thereby it will affect the customer success team and the overall performance. I like to. I think one way of looking at it is a little bit like some of the American airlines, where they might have great planes, new planes. They might have actually a decent customer success and a decent web page. But then when the service itself, once you are in the plane, they treat you like you're cattle. It leaves a bad impression. It doesn't matter how good the rest was, how easy it was to book the ticket or to rebook the ticket. Then you still be like, okay, what is this? Well, I'm not doing this again to myself. And
Exactly.
and that's where I agree with you. What you said at the very beginning of the webinar is people will be willing to pay for quality and good service and the human interaction and the human touch. And I think that's to me at least. I think that's important to remember, no matter
Yeah.
where technology is taking us. Yeah. But thank you for that, and thanks for the questions. So, well, that will wrap it up. Thank you so much, Paolo, for being here. If anybody here has any questions or any wants to talk to us, please reach out. You can always find me or the rest of our team. And we will make this publicly available so that anybody who wants to re-listen to this or get in touch with Paolo can do that. I'm sure he will be looking forward to more clients to use his service. And yeah, thank you for making the time. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for being, I guess, a long-term client that has supported us also all these years. I hope our customer success team has been satisfactory.
Zero complaints. Zero complaints.
Thank
Not
you
just
for
saying
that.
that because you're here, but yeah, it's been a wonderful relationship with Penbrothers. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice to hear that. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks Paolo so much for making the time. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy the cold Singapore. I was surprised to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I will. I will. Thanks, Nico. Good
Perfect.
having you.
Thank you.